Welcome to the next video on the Proxmox series. So in the previous video, we installed Proxmox, so now we need to install ISOs in a VM. So we're going to start with a Windows VM. Now that we have Proxmox installed, the next thing we'll want to do is build some VMs. But before we can build the VMs, we have to import the ISO files. So on the screen, you see underneath the device, we have two storage locations. One of them is selected to already has some choices for ISO images and templates, and the other one has VM disks. So let's go ahead and go to the ISO images. So if we select this, we have two options. We can either download the ISO from a URL, or we can upload it from our local machine. You can navigate to it. So on my machine, I happen to have some ISO files already saved. This is a Windows 10 machine, so I'm going to go ahead and upload it. And then just select upload. And it will take a few seconds as you see the status bar across the top. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and upload all my ISOs. And then when you're ready to build the VM, you can build it directly from the ISO that is on the Proxmox server. And once this one is complete, I'm going to include ISOs for a Windows server, so I can set up a domain environment with Active Directory, as well as a Kali attack box and Kali Purple that I will install my SIM on, which most likely will be Elastic. So once that thing is finished installing, you get this message here. So we're done. We can just close that for now, and I'm going to upload another one. So I'll go ahead and upload the Kali Purple. Okay, so now that is complete. We see the task was completed. Okay, so we'll close that and let's upload our next VM, our next ISO, which will be just straight up Kali. Okay, that task finished successfully, so we'll close that. We'll upload the next one. This is my Windows server. And that task was successfully completed. So now we'll go back to ISOs, and what I will import now is pfSense. This will give us the capability to use pfSense as a firewall. That is successfully completed. We'll go back, select the file. So I am going to import an Ubuntu workstation. Okay, that is complete. So for now, I'm going to upload one more. This will be an Ubuntu server. And that has completed successfully. So now you see we have about 6 or 7 ISOs for operating systems. But before we can start to build the VMs, we need to upload one more ISO that includes drivers for the Windows machines. Okay, what we want to do is to download the drivers that we will need, to refer to as the Win10 drivers. And what this allows is basically the drivers that we need for a Windows machine to run on Proxmox. So we can download it from, this is the wiki page for Proxmox. If you go from there, you can go down, scroll down under installation, and we can download the most latest stable is what I'll choose. And when it gets downloaded, it's going to be an ISO file that we will then bring up on, we will then upload to our Proxmox server. So we go back to our Proxmox server under the local storage, the ISO image tab, and then we will select upload, select the file. Now this time I just downloaded it, so it is my downloads folders. Bring it up and then select upload. And as I mentioned before, we will need to use that ISO as an additional drive on our Windows VM so that it has all the drivers that we would need. So now that we have all our ISOs uploaded to Proxmox, we'll build our first Windows VM. So we'll go to the node. So the way this tree layout is the data center. That's our Proxmox system. And then you can have multiple nodes. We'll just have one single node at this time. And then from within that node, we will go over on the upper right and you see create VM. So we'll select create VM. In the first under general, you see there's a VM ID. So that has to be a unique number for each virtual machine. Now, by default, it's going to take the next available number starting at 100 and give the VM that next available VM ID. Now, if you want to, you can manually set it. I'm just going to keep it at 100 and we'll just go with the default for now. And then we can name the system. So this is going to be a Windows 10 VM. I'm going to call it -1. Then we'll go to the operating system tab. And we are going to use the ISO file that we uploaded earlier. So storage is local. Then we hit this drop down. It will show us all the available ISOs that we have. And I'll go down to the Windows 10 ISO. So I've selected that. And over on the right, I need to select Microsoft Windows. And the version that I want is Windows 10. Now we also want to select this box to add the additional drive for the Win10 drivers. Remember that was that additional ISO that we uploaded. So once again, we can just do the drop down. There it is. So we're ready to now go and select the next button. And this is just some basic information. We will select the QEMU agent, and that will just help optimize the virtual machine running in Proxmox. And from there, we can select next. If this was a Windows 11 box, we would be required to add the TPM. However, for Windows 10, we're not required, so I'm going to skip that for now. The disk, this is where we will increase the disk size. I'm going to go to 100 gigabytes. The rest I will keep as default and select next. So for CPUs, depending on what that particular VM is going to be used for, you may want to give it more CPUs. I'm going to give it, I'm going to start with 4 because I'll probably install Flare on top of this VM. So then I'm going to need more processing power because I'm going to do more. But if it's just going to be a victim VM, then you would probably just keep it at 1 or 2, whatever the default is. And the next is memory. So the default is 2 gigabytes, but as I said, I'm going to bounce this up to at least 6 or 8. And that's because, as I said, if I use this as the Flare machine, then I want to be able to, I want to make sure that I have enough resources. You can always change it later. Okay, so under network, we'll just, for now, we're going to just keep the standard bridge. Going to disable the firewall for now. Then we select next. And under confirm, it basically just gives you one last chance to confirm that everything is good. I will select this start after created. So after the VM is finished being created, it will start. And I'll select finish. So at this point, now you see over on the left-hand column underneath the node, you see the Windows machine, and you see it's already using some CPU and memory, so it's starting. Now, if you want to actually observe it, what we can do over here under console is we can select no VNC. And basically now we can have the terminal to our Windows machine. So everything seems to be working. Now we just need to install Windows. So we'll select next on this, and we'll select install now. This is a basic Windows install, so we're going to accept the license. So right now it's saying it couldn't find any drives to get a storage driver. Load the driver. So we'll select load driver. And we'll browse for that driver, and it should the driver should be in that CD. Okay, so under this, we need to browse down to the virtual IO SCSI, and then we just come down to Windows 10 and a 64-bit. We'll select OK. So now we see that it's picked it up. Select next. Now it shows up. So we can go ahead and select next here. So that is why it was important that we uploaded that ISO for the drivers for the Windows. And at this point, it's going to take some time, as all Windows setups do. So I'm going to pause the video and we'll pick back up. Okay, so Windows has gone through the initial setup and it has rebooted. So now we just have the final configuration to do. Select your region. I'm in the US. Good with the US keyboard. I can skip the additional keyboard. So what is happening now, it's not recognizing the network adapter. So what we need to do is go ahead and install another network adapter. So what we need to do is go to the VM, to the hardware section. For network adapter, we want to add one. If we use the default Intel network adapter, we'll just select add. And now if we go back to our Windows VM, it automatically recognized the network adapter. So we can now go ahead and finish And I will pause the video as this continues its setup. All right, so now it's asking if we want to log in with the work account. We do not want to. So what we're going to select to get around this is domain join instead. And then we just give it name who's going to be using this. So I'm going to set this network up with the Mr. Robot theme. So this will just be P price. I'll select next, and I'll give him a password. Confirm the password. And you can select these. Basically, I wouldn't advise doing this in a real environment, but for these security questions, for these test boxes, I just answer every question with the username. Obviously, you would not do this in a real environment. All right, don't want any of these turned on. So everything seems to be in order. Windows is doing its final touches. So we'll have our first virtual machine deployed to Proxmox. And we'll repeat the same process. I won't cover it in the video, but I'm going to repeat the same thing for one more Windows workstation and a domain controller. But the steps will be the same. Just ensure that you remember to add the extra drive for the Virt.io drivers. So the last thing we want to do is let's check our device manager to make sure that all the drivers were properly installed. And we see that we have some devices that we have errors there because the driver was not installed. And this is that Ethernet adapter that we ran into earlier. So if I select update driver, I want to browse my computer for the driver because I want to go to that CD. So we can just select the drive. We don't have to go to the specific folder this time. We select OK. Then we select next. And it will search for the drivers. It found the driver and installed it. And now when we look at our device manager, we don't see any issues with that. There may be an issue with the PCI device. And we'll do the same again. And it did pick up that driver as well. So it appears that we have the drivers for all the devices. Okay, what we can do now is we just do a quick review on the summary. And we see like the CPU usage, network traffic. We see some additional information, and we see an error here, guest agent not running. So what we need to do is go back to the console. We need to go back to that CD and go to guest agent folder, open that, and then we will run the 64-bit version of this. And this will optimize our performance working with Proxmox. Now we can go back to the summary. And now you see we're not getting that message anymore. All right, so that finished setting up. So this completes the setup for a Windows VM. And just I'll open the command prompt and do an IP config. So right now it's getting IP addresses from my home network. So we'll set up the networking after we get all the virtual machines built. But basically, we have an IP address, and we can ping out to the 8.8.8. So we have completed our first virtual machine for Proxmox, and we'll repeat the same thing for another Windows machine that I will not include in the video, as well as a domain controller. The point to remember is ensure that you set up the additional drive to upload the virt.io drivers, and then you will need those drivers for like the network connection that we ran into before, and also to recognize the hard drive. So just remember, when you get those two errors, that you need to go to your virt.io drivers. Actually, the network one was just going and adding an additional network card with the default Intel adapter. So that completes the Windows installation. And in the next video, we will install a Linux VM.